What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of All Out War, episode number 141.
Oh, is it?
It is 141, man.
Nice.
You know, I was thinking about it. If you include all the ones we do with the private podcast, we'd be in like the 150s, somewhere in there,
Nice.
which is
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, it's a lot. You know, not as I mean, some people do like multiple a week.
Yeah.
You know, some of these podcasts do every day because they're news oriented or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, what's up, Rosey? How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a good day.
It is a good day.
Yeah.
The last couple of weeks have been really good.
Yeah.
We've had the most gorgeous fall in this area of the country, this Virginia area where we live, that we've had in years. Like the colors and the weather
Yeah.
have been amazing.
I wish it was colder. It's been too hot for me.
Yeah, well,
Today was nice.
Today
it was in the 40s.
Yeah, it was in the 40s.
Perfect weather.
Yeah, perfect. I was raking leaves today.
Mhm.
You know, doing the whole keep the yard nice.
Yeah. I don't have to worry about that.
You don't. It's really nice for you. I'm happy.
Yeah.
So what do you know, man?
Oh, crap.
While you're looking for that, Rachel won't be with us on this episode, but she'll be back, I guess, at some point. She's got a lot going on in her personal life, family, and after her move and everything. So,
Yeah.
anyways.
So you might actually know this,
Okay.
but I don't know. It's good. Did you know that Sylvester Graham, who was a 19th century antebellum American reformer, spoke out in favor of healthy living, which included avoiding meats, alcohol, and too much sexual activity? He created the graham cracker, which is a bland cracker, in order to stop the need for sexual intimacy.
What?
Yeah.
So if I eat graham crackers, I won't want to have sex with my wife?
Yes.
What?
I don't
We
know.
must rid the graham crackers from all of my house.
Yeah. So it says Sylvester Graham was an American minister, preached on temperance, and stressed a whole wheat, flour, and vegetarian diets. Gay. He was known for his graham crackers. His Graham Journal of Health and Longevity preached the principles of good health. He compared people physiologically to orangutans.
Nice.
Concluded that vegetarian food was natural for both primates. No, gay. Graham had many devoted followers known as Grahamites, who slavishly followed his principles, which included temperance, sexual restraint, and baths-based.
Baths. I do like a good bath.
In addition to vegetarianism, gay. He was so famous that his lectures on proper living were attended by thousands, and he was able to hold his audiences spellbound. He had many disciples who also worked diligently to further the vegetarian cause.
Yeah.
So it said... let's go. Graham argued that in order to help resist epidemics, to get over, he was anti-vax, which was based.
Yeah.
He didn't like big city life.
That's good.
Where I just had it.
He's just off a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the vegetarian thing.
Yeah, but basically, yeah, I'm trying to like find exactly a way to word it, but yes, in order to stop people from engaging in sexual activity, married and unmarried.
Married? Why would he want to stop that?
Because he's weird, a vegetarian. That's why you shouldn't be a vegetarian. Because if you eat if you're a vegetarian, you get brain damage. You get brain damage. You get worms in your brain that eat, and it doesn't make sense.
I don't think you're going to be able to stop the human sex drive. I just don't think.
No, you know how like for all those men and women who are not married and trying to remain pure, and we've done a bunch of episodes on porn.
Right. Yeah.
We failed you because we never told you the only way to rid yourself of the struggle with pornography and the other stuff that comes with that is eating graham crackers.
So, and
that's where they're invented.
It's November too. They have the
don't say it.
The no.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Yes.
I don't think we can say the name of it.
Not on this episode. Not on this. On the private, we could.
But if you
no November. That they always have all these different. No shave November. No everything November. Right. One of them is no fat.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
How's that? No fat November.
It's going to bring up even more questions.
I know, right? Urban Dictionary, kids.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you are struggling with porn and masturbation, eat graham crackers instead.
Oh, man.
Anytime.
Put them in milk.
Say, be gone, Satan. I got my graham crackers.
What you do is you get a blender, you put some broccoli, some graham crackers, you just blend them up. And
kale.
And then you have your food
the
for the
most
day.
disgusting food ever. Only a vegetarian would come up with that.
Right. That's
because they got poop in their heads, their brains.
All right. Well,
did you know that before? That graham crackers were...
So I had heard, I thought it was Nabisco, but I guess it was graham cracker. Or maybe it was Kellogg was trying to do the same thing with the cereal, with the Frosted Flakes.
Frosted Flakes,
Corn Flakes.
Corn Flakes, yeah.
So I'd heard that one, but the graham one was, so that's new to me. So that's a more, but the fact that he was a minister too, that's just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a whole movement in the 1800s, early 1900s that was this aesthetic of, they were really experimenting with some spiritual weird stuff. There's
a second Great Awakening, right?
There was a second Great Awakening that happened, yeah. The Azusa Street Revival, things like that out in California, and where the stories of that are crazy too if you read about them, where people were walking down the street and there was preaching going on, and they would get near the door and be overwhelmed with conviction and fall on their knees and repent, not even hearing, just being near the building. It was the presence of God, I guess.
Yeah, but I can't. I thought that's what they called it. The
Second Great Awakening.
No, but I thought the crazy spiritualist movement. That's what it was called, the spiritualist movement.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the Second Great Awakening was probably response to that.
Probably, yeah. Something was going on there. I think. Yeah, and the same thing happened in the 60s with the hippies and stuff, and then the Jesus freaks that were all saved and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, all right, man. Well, we got a great episode. It's going to be on dreams. So, as I always say, sit back, grab a coffee, and enjoy.
You're listening to the All Out War podcast.
Yes, you are.
Bump.
All right, man. One time I should, anyway, so we're going to talk about...
Okay.
I was going to say something and I changed my mind halfway through. That's the problem with being an extrovert, is that you oftentimes will think, you'll speak as you're thinking.
Yeah.
And that my wife can attest to this. A lot of my, I process through talking.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I'm trying to figure out solutions to problems and things like that, I'm going to talk it through rather than think it through. Whereas my wife, she's a thinker, and so she'll think about it before she even opens her mouth. And then when she opens her mouth, it's been almost every possible, response has been already thought through.
Yeah.
That's why she's never wrong in our disagreements and arguments. Not that we have very many, but
right.
But she's learned to allow me to process verbally, and it helps me and helps her too, because she can kind of know how I think, and we end up getting to the same place. It just a lot of words on my side, a lot of silence on her side. It's kind of like me and you.
Yeah.
So this episode, Dreams, it's, gosh, man, I talked to you about doing an episode like this on this topic a while ago, and when I did, I was like, I didn't realize the onion we were gonna peel back.
Yeah.
There's so much to the topic of dreams, in particular when you start to look at it from different angles, like you were saying, the scientific, and then you have the secular, and then you have the Christian, and there's so many angles to approach it, and so it was making it challenging for us, you and I, to figure out how do we hone this down. I think we have a decent, kind of outline for it.
I just because you're like, I want to do it on dreams, and I was like, yeah, we should, and then I was like, I don't know how we're going to structure it, because I was like, oh, we should talk about this and this and this and this, and then you have this book that we're also is
a
so
reference
incredible
book, yeah.
that is for something totally else, but I think it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, it'll be perfect. And so
it's however God wants it to be.
So I do, yeah. And here's the thing: like I realized this today too. You know, when I was thinking about stuff, I was raking leaves, thinking about the podcast a little bit, and one of the things that I was thinking about with it was that how dreams literally affect everyone.
Yeah.
The young, the old, the saved, the unsaved. It doesn't matter what culture, rich or poor. It really doesn't matter because it's something that is like an internal thing that happens with a person. And what's amazing is that, I think, which is really cool, is that, when I look at it from my point of view, my vantage point, which is going to be from a Christian, vantage point, from a biblical worldview, God used and uses dreams throughout the Bible a lot.
Yeah.
He uses dreams in the lives of his people a lot, and even those that aren't his people. And so it's really cool. So that'll be the fun part when we get into this. That'll be the fun part of and we're going to get into like some unique things biblically, different stories. But why don't we start with the scientific side of it first, and then we'll move to the spiritual side of it after that.
Yeah.
So you had some
So first, I was thinking, I'm just going to read, what do the scientists that, so this is like what the mainstream, like not very materialist look at like what a dream is, because this sort of touches on consciousness, which is something that scientists always go back and forth on.
Right.
What it is. We don't really know. And I think you brought up some good questions later on that will start an interesting conversation, because I think I know I definitely have some different views that maybe for better or worse, whatever. But anyway, so this is like what I'm going to start off with. This I'm about to read is a very this is what scientists in the brain with the chemicals, this is, what a dream is.
Right, sure.
So it says in REM sleep, which is the rapid eye movement, which is the deepest form of sleep when you get into there.
Yeah.
It says it is believed.
A horrible band too, by the way.
What? I legitimately like REM.
I can't even believe that.
They have a song called Orange Crush.
Yes.
And I love Orange Soda.
So what? It's still a bad song. They're a bad band. I did not like REM.
Really?
They tried so hard to be like alternative.
They were.
Michael Stipe, I think is it.
Yeah.
They had like one good song.
Dude, I like a bunch of their songs.
Yeah. That sucks for you.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I'll pray for you.
Pray for me. Thanks. So in REM sleep, it's believed that we experience our most vivid dreams. Studies have shown that dreaming is controlled by forebrain, FOREBRAIN. Oh my God. I think I'm getting PTSD from trying to read from like last week when we were reading through the Talmud stuff.
It's this room, man. We need to cleanse this room.
I can speak English. Studies have found that dreaming is controlled by forebrain mechanisms, which influence our speech, abstract thought, and pleasure. And the REM stage of sleep is controlled by the brainstem, which helps regulate our heartbeat and breathing. In a chain of reactions, the brainstem can stimulate the forebrain and cause dreams to occur. Scientists have also found that as we dream, that amygdala
brain.
Oh my gosh, dude, I'm getting Talmud PTSD for these words. The amygdala, the part of the brain that deals with emotion, is more active than it is when we are awake. As we will see later on, this is the key to understand the meaning of the dreams.
Yeah.
So basically, it's chemical reactions. That's all it is. And you should be stupid. Like, there's no reason. What he's saying is there's no reason to, like, take anything from it. It's just your brain
from a scientific
doing
standpoint.
The stuff. And it's like, they'll talk about, like, it's just cleaning out. It's like a process of cleaning out for the next.
It's defragging your brain.
Defragment. Yeah, that's a great one. I'm surprised you know what defragging is. So that's a very thing. It's chemicals, just cleaning out crap that you thought about.
So
and there's no real purpose to it.
So they're
It's just-
basically saying that it's like no different than like your kidneys or your liver doing
cleaning,
its functions.
Yeah, it's just that's what it is. That's just what it does.
Huh.
So
I guess we could just end the episode. All right, cool.
yeah, there you go.
That's
Christians,
dreams, guys.
God is good. God made your brain, and your brain does that, and there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, so moving on from the scientific one point of view, where it kind of gets more interesting, is basically if you look into you being the proverbial anyone listening to this, you sitting across from me,
You hearing this, yeah.
anyone, if you look into any kind of dream interpretation dictionaries, there's a lot online. You can look up. I've done it.
Yeah. You got to be careful with those, though.
Yeah,
A lot of new age stuff
it is
floating.
Yeah. And so basically there's two kind of schools of thought that came from, and I'll say respectable, air quotes, as psychoanalysis of like basically doctors came up with these two different, but there's two very distinct different kinds of interpretations of dreams. And getting into these two doctors, Sigmund Freud is one of them, and then Carl Jung is the other.
Yeah.
Sigmund Freud came first. He was older, and Carl Jung, Freud was established as a psychoanalyst, a psychiatrist. And then Jung came underneath him. They said the first time they ever met, they spoke for 13 hours straight.
Oh my gosh.
And they just like came intensely.
I didn't realize they were that connected.
Oh yeah. And then they were good friends. They traveled to America. Freud had even said he was the Moses, and Carl Jung was his
Aaron or Joshua.
Joshua, that he would, I think it was Joshua, the exact quote, but basically he was the one that was setting up everything, but he wasn't going to see the fulfillment of it.
Right.
And Jung, he thought, was going to come in
usher
and
it in.
usher it in and actually get to see the fruition of getting to the promised land.
Interesting.
And then they had a big falling out.
Oh.
And so Freud had these two students, this other guy named, I think it was William Adler. I don't have this in the notes, but they both, him and Carl Jung, had different interpretations of Freud. And Freud was so upset at Jung that he actually said, Adler doesn't have, this is dumb, but it's better than Jung, because at least
wow.
At least Adler, his stuff is wrong, but the way that he's thinking about it is respectable. And then he's like, Carl over there, the dude's like an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Everything's stupid. He's just stupid.
Right.
It was something like that.
I never would have dreamed they would have a falling out.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Like that.
Yeah. And I want to read an excerpt from, I'm trying to pull it up. So one of the biggest, I'm trying to think, these are also just for anyone listening that studied psychiatry, studied psychology, I am going to be distilling huge implications, very, very big concepts into very small things, just so we can work on, because they're not. That's
what I was going to ask you. Do you have a synopsis of what Freud thought? And
that's what I'm trying to. Okay. Yeah. So Freud, and this, I'm just going to read this quote, this part about him, and then it'll make sense. So it said, Freud's relationship with his mother was also complex. Amalia Freud was described as young, attractive, and energetic. She always took great pride in her son, and was strong, positive, and a great influence throughout his life. Later in life, he wrote that a man who has been the indistinguishable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror, the confidence of success that often induces real success. During Freud's self-analysis around the year 1897, he uncovered profound memories from his earliest years. Sometime between the ages of 2.5 and 4 years old, Freud accidentally saw his mother naked. This event awakened a powerful desire in Freud. Shortly after recovering this memory, he remembered his deep jealousy that he had felt when his brother Julius was born, shortly before Freud was 2 years old. So jealous was Freud that he remembered welcoming the death of his infant brother, which is crazy for a 2-year-old. Yeah. Each of these incidents certainly had an impact on Freud's theory of the Oedipus complex. Surprisingly, however, during the first 2.5 years of Freud's life, he actually spent very little time with his mother since he was being raised by a nursemaid.
He saw his mama naked.
So he saw his mom naked.
I don't know. I don't know.
Loud? What does it say?
I don't know what it says. Oh. I was looking for something to throw in there because I don't have that's all I got.
I mean, we can just have a serious podcast.
I'm sorry. I like the buttons.
Yeah, it's okay. So from that,
that's just crazy.
Because Freud, again, uncovered in his unconscious this memory that may or may not happen.
Right.
Basically, everything with Freud is sexual.
So that's what I was going to say. All your sex dreams go to Freud for your interpretation.
It's not even sex dreams. It's every single thing that you do, everything that drives a human being, everything that drives literally everything is sex.
Dude, him and Graham would not have gotten along.
No. I wasn't thinking when I picked it, did you know? But it goes so well.
Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect setup. Graham would have been like, so, Freud, and
right.
Can I get you something to eat?
Yeah. So that's where Freud, everything comes down to sex, and it comes down to the Oedipus complex, which is every boy wants to kill his father and have sex with his mother. And then every girl wants to have sex with her dad.
Yeah. So speaking as a boy, never had that thought in my life.
No.
Not once.
No.
I know a lot of other men that were boys that thought never entered their mind.
Right. But and so a lot of this, the whole thing I'm getting at is Freud basically, and people can say what they want about him.
Sure.
They're like, oh, he's great or whatever. But I think he was just a weirdo that and this is not my own opinion. Other people way smarter than me have come to this conclusion that he was just so obsessed with sex that he's like some pervert who's like, everyone else has to. Like if I want to have sex with my mom, everyone wants to have sex with your mom because you want to normalize it. Mm-hmm. And
gosh, where do I see that happening in culture today?
Exactly. Yeah. So for him, and he wrote all these dreams, but that's the basis of it. Carl Jung is totally different, and I'm going to read...
what did he want to have sex with?
I don't know. But here's...
I'm just kidding.
No, it's okay. So I will just skip down since I actually wasn't thinking about talking about that. So Freud and Jung on dreams. So here's some... Freud had a perspective on dreams that saw them from the outside after the fact, as reported or remembered later on by the patient. In his 1900 book, written in year 1900, The Interpretation of Dreams, Freud described his approach to dream analysis that introduced psychological meaning in terms of hidden symbolism that was motivated by the patient's psychodynamics of emotional repression. This psychological approach to dream interpretation was guided by pre-established concepts from Freud's psychoanalytical system of thinking. Psychoanalytic dream interpretation was highly successful and widely accepted by psychiatrists and introduced into movies, film, and stage as themes. It is also acclaimed by many dedicated followers and has continued the life and use of psychoanalysis for more than a century. Jung's perspective on dreams was an entirely different sort. The two approaches stand in sharp and opposite relation to dualism. Freud's approach to dreams is a materialistic application, while Jung's definition of dreams is dualist. Jung's idea of what are dreams... why do I always find these... Jung's idea of what dreams are is deeper and more objective, since the archetypes that cause dreams were collective, universal, and anatomical or biological, and therefore objective and empirical, unlike Freud's dream analysis that may be called subjective and hypothetical. Freud looked at the consequent effects in dreaming, which were merely so many detailed external appearances in which dreams were cast, while Jung looked at the cause of the dream, which is its interior, objective, psychic origin.
Yeah.
Freud also discussed dreams as being psychological expressions caused by the dreamer's desire to hide elements of the self that were too threatening to the conscious awareness. Wrapping dreams into layers of distractions was viewed as a defense mechanism that the patient was using to repress certain emotions and feelings that were simply unacceptable to the conscious ego. Jung added a totally independent dimension to dreams that gave them an objective existence in another world called the psychic world. Freud denied the independent existence of a psychic world since he was the scientific materialist in which the mind is purely physical and part of the biology of the physical brain. This monistic view of the mind is still in effect today in neuroscience and material psychology. It says there's a discussion today in neuroscience that mind and consciousness may be emergent phenomena, but these are still physical and have no independent existence from the physical brain. Hence, at death or in a coma, the mind does not emerge or exist. So, basically, and this doesn't get, I won't read more. There is more to it.
Yeah.
That's interesting, but for the sake of this. So, you have Freud, who thinks everyone wants to bang their mom or their dad.
Right.
And because acknowledging that is so unacceptable to not just the person itself, but society.
Yeah.
Or I should say the reverse.
Western
not
culture.
to society. Well, not just Western society. Everyone. That's incest is taboo in every single culture.
Okay.
To the world, that the human, like the me, I have to suppress it deep down. And that causes other ailments that go into the rest of my life. Maybe that's why,
Right.
I'm a pushover, is because my mom was overbearing and, whatever. But Freud thought that even though everyone is kind of, everyone has that same driving force of trying to repress this idea, these sexual feelings, each dream is like this different for everyone. So it's really weird. So he takes this approach that everyone has the same thing, but the dreams are different for every person. So
You mean the interpretation?
the interpretation.
Okay.
Right. And it really, again, is just very not spiritual at all. That's
Right.
modern science.
Right,
come
right.
for that. Jung has this idea of a collective unconscious. So he was actually raised by, his dad was a minister.
Right.
Freud came from they were Jewish, and then Jung was a Christian, but they had these different out views. One was very scientific. One was, Carl Jung used to go to church with so he grew up in this very spiritual world.
Yeah.
Freud came up in a very secular world. But Jung had this idea, so he did believe in God, and he actually said, I didn't believe in God, I know he exists. And he has these ideas of God. It's not a Christian.
Right.
I'm not saying that Carl Jung is
Right. I hear
Christian
you.
or you should listen to him as being a gospel, because he's not.
Right.
But he has this idea that kind of everyone's thoughts, actions, unactions, like different beings of self, different shadow parts of our body that we can't rationalize or anything, kind of all go into this huge collective unconscious that is ethereal. It's a spiritual thing that kind of everyone can tap into.
Like the cloud.
Yeah, it's kind of like this spiritual cloud. I think they call it
The consciousness.
universe. Yeah, I think it's called the Enochian records, or
right. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
that. It's some
I know what
this
you're talking
idea
about.
of some records. Google whatever, the collective unconscious dream, but basically, that's what UFOs are. Like, he takes these things in super crazy ways, but
He says that's what UFOs are.
he said that's what UFOs are.
right.
But he was the one. These are a spiritual thing. It's a psychological thing. They're physical manifestations of dreams and all this really crazy stuff.
Okay.
But the whole point that I'm getting at is you have one guy who is really into this crazy spiritual not necessarily New Age, but sort of New Age, but it came from a Christian background. But it's a very spiritual thing that there's deep interpretations for every single person, and we're all, existing more, and there is a lot of value into symbolism, and that's far greater than just wanting to bang your mom.
In the interpretation process.
In the interpretation
Gotcha.
of dreams.
Okay.
So those are the two. So
Yeah.
Now when you start seeing, like, you said I couldn't believe, or I wouldn't have dreamt that they split.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to see where they totally
Yeah.
came off totally different bases.
Yeah.
So that's why if you start reading dream dictionaries, if you're reading a Freudian one, it's telling you want to bang your mom. If you read one that's based on like a Jungian thing, it's going to talk about all kinds of
synthetic stuff that you can't even like.
It's hard to
right. You
distill
can't even
down.
put a. It's Jello, right?
Yeah.
Jungin was pretty. He had some pretty good stuff though. I mean, like he was a genius, very intelligent person. Like I'm some of the stuff we've talked about in the past. I mean, I don't obviously subscribe to a lot of his.
Yeah, I will say this is interesting. Also, they don't. I have a particular. Again, I hold Jung in way more regard
than Freud.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And a big thing of that is I don't know if I talked about it during my testimony, but I'm trying to think of how to word this because I don't want to word it by giving it away. But if someone, if you go to a 12-step program, the original 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, is based on, the name of that is based on a book that was written called The Big Book that describes what the first 100 people that got sober did. This is how they did it. Yeah. And the whole basis for finding a spiritual awakening in order to solve the alcoholic problem was based on Carl Jung. So they actually went, and he was one of the ones that said, so they sent this guy over to, Austria or Switzerland to go talk to Carl Jung. And he was like, this guy's got a spiritual problem, and the only way that he's going to solve it is God. He has to find God. And so the basis of all 12-step programs is basically Jung and the Christian group. There's the Oxford group was, they had 7 principles, I think.
Is that where the Oxford House came from?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, okay.
But so when you had this temperance movement that came out in the 1800s, was Christian and this Jungian idea, and it was this kind of amalgamation, and that's what basically, in my opinion, the best working way of addiction recovery. Yeah. So
I agree.
Jung has some very good things that, as someone who's in recovery, that had gotten a lot of benefit out of the 12 steps.
Yeah, you have.
So I like Carl Jung, but it's very cool stuff.
Yeah. So that's an interesting approach, though. So like purely from a scientific standpoint, we're told that dreams are the result of chemical, while we're sleeping, chemical changes in the brain, coming from the brainstem in the frontal brain area, the amygdala, and giving us our dreams. And then the two main camps of psychology would say, one would say it's suppressed sexual issues, and the other one would say it's a spiritual, I'm just putting that label on there, spiritual. It's a dimension. I wish I had a better word, but not Christian necessarily, but spiritual in that phase is what's causing those dreams. And so, or the interpretation method would be filtered through a spiritual lens versus a repressed sexual lens.
Well, it's also the cause of dreams too.
The cause and the interpretation.
Yeah, because Freud would say it is, again, you don't dream when you die. You die.
Right.
Your consciousness does not carry on.
Right.
It still is a very.
So was he an atheist?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You're gonna always have that. Science is the king.
Yeah. So I thought another interesting thing that I think is worth mentioning, this other guy and his aspects of it, as we're kind of moving more towards a Christian
worldview
tinge, is this guy named Emanuel Swedenborg, who I also want to say this, that when I read, I'm not espousing, how about I'll back up a step. I'm not saying that you should read Emanuel Swedenborg, that he was correct.
Yeah, we're not endorsing.
Endorsing, that's the word.
Yeah.
And based on Emanuel Swedenborg's writings, the New Age came out of that.
Oh, there
like
you
he
go.
was way before Emanuel.
That's where when you were mentioning him before,
Yeah.
that's where I connected him with. I knew.
Yeah, I talked about the Jesus letter. Like
Yes.
that was one of the first. He was a precursor.
Yep.
A lot of his ideas were taken by Blavatsky and all these other people. So he's kind like, I don't want to put all of that on him because he didn't really start.
They
like this.
used his stuff.
They used his stuff,
and they perverted it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I get it.
Yeah, so I'll just read a little
But he
bit.
still was a little off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it said Emanuel Swedenborg was a Swedish pluralistic Christian theologian, scientist, philosopher, and mystic. He became best known for his book on the afterlife, Heaven and Hell, which was written in 1758. Swedenborg had a prolific career as an inventor and scientist. In 1741, at 53, he entered into a spiritual phase in which he began to experience dreams and visions, notably on Easter weekend on April 6th, 1744. His experiences culminated in a, quote, spiritual awakening in which he received a revelation that Jesus Christ had appointed him to write the heavenly doctrine to reform Christianity. According to the heavenly doctrine, the Lord had opened Swedenborg's spiritual eyes so that from then on he could freely visit heaven and hell and converse with angels, demons, and other spirits, and that the last judgment had already occurred in 1757, the year prior. It said over the last 28 years of his life, Swedenborg wrote 18 published theological works and several more that remain unpublished. He termed himself a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ in True Christian Religion, which he published himself. Some followers of the heavenly doctrine believe that his theological works, only those that were published by Swedenborg himself, are fully divinely inspired.
Wow.
Others have regarded all of Swedenborg's theological works as equally inspired, saying, for example, that the fact that some works were not, quote, written out in final edited form for publication does not make a single statement less trustworthy than the statements of any of the other works. The new church, also known as Swedenborgianism, is a new religious movement that was founded in 1787 and comprised several historically related Christian denominations that revere Swedenborg's writings as revelation.
Yeah.
So there are still churches, and I'm not going to go down that.
Yeah. It's almost like a denomination that developed out of it, but very mystical.
Yeah. So I just have a couple things that he writes about, which are pretty interesting. So this is based on Swedenborgianism. Dreams and visions have formed a part of the life of man since the time when he first began to inhabit this planet we call Earth. And indeed, we need not limit ourselves to Earth, for the peoples of other planets are essentially the same as the humans of our Earth. They have the same basic faculties and capacities from the Lord, and they are influenced and formed by the same general environment as we have. Truly, they are in a variety of different states, ranging from what is relatively pure and heavenly to what is impure and hellish. In the history of the church on earth, we see reflected something of the many states that man can enter into. Think of the multitude of states there are then when we think of the history of the natural universe. It says, and yet, no matter what the state of man in, there are certain things which are common to all men in all states. All men in the natural universe are inhabitants of two worlds at the same time, the natural and the spiritual. As to their bodies, all men live in the world of nature and are sustained by the world of nature. Through their sensory organs of the body, all men are influenced from without, from their external environment, from the world of fixed form, matter, space, and time. As to their spirits, however, all men live in the spiritual world. Through their souls and minds, they receive from within the life, the love, the affection, the delight, and the sensation of the spiritual world. This is the world which, although removed from the sight of man's natural vision, flows into him and gives life purpose to the movement and use of the natural body. The influx of the spiritual world into man begins with the Lord, since he alone is the source of life, and flows through the heavens, through the world of spirits, and through the hells, so that when it enters man, it is literally filled with all the life and activity, and with all the various qualities of the loves and affections of the inhabitants of the spiritual world. And so, just finish one last one. The truth that the qualities and affections of angels, spirits, and devils flow into each man and affect him has long been lost. Back in the most ancient days of man's life on this earth, such knowledge of the influence of spiritual companions was precious to them. In the dreams and the visions of sweet sleep, they saw the life of heaven unfolded. They knew the spiritual companions as dear friends and delighted in the joys and happiness of heaven that they received through them. In dreams and visions, they received the instruction that guided their natural life in divine order and according to divine purpose. All forms of nature lived, for each was seen as the representation of some heavenly love and affection. To such people there was none of the loneliness and emptiness that so accompanies the states of our life on earth today. For if all else failed, the presence of spiritual companions in dreams and visions filled all states with the joy of spiritual friendship. So it's interesting. And I kind of like that take that he's talking about. Again, there's some that I like there, and then there's some that's just crazy.
Yeah.
But I like the way that he broke it down, that we're like living in the same realm at the same time. And, it is true. A lot of people back in the day were experiencing visions and interacting, on this physical plane with angels that took form, obviously that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing, because you have what it's called an open vision,
right?
Which is like Daniel standing on the side of the water, by the river, and an angel shows up, and that's the big crux of a lot of the question is like that, and these are the things that interest me about dreams. Is like, are we in our dreams? Is the spirit realm entering into our conscious, or are we entering into the spirit realm? Like, is there a doorway somehow that is allowing? Like, obviously, my physical body's laying in my bed or wherever I'm sleeping, but is there a veil that's thinly opened? And because I do believe the spirit realm enters into the dream realm of my subconscious, or my when I'm unconscious, and I guess that would be
your consciousness.
So I think that when we start to try and dissect it, it gets really messy.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different thoughts on it. But one thing that's undeniable is that it is used by God.
Yeah.
Like, the spirit realm does enter it. Like, I've had dreams that were evil.
Yeah.
Demonic. And we can share some of those later if we want, or the good stuff.
I don't have any. So
you don't have evil dreams?
No, I don't remember many dreams. I'm not good at it.
That is something too. Like, when I was younger, I used to have a lot of dreams, and man.
Well, I will say, maybe kind of before we get into the next bit, because you brought up a lot of points. Dreaming is something that you actually is a skill. It's like a muscle that you work at it and you keep doing it. The more that you do it, the more it becomes natural, the more you become better at it. So you actually can.
So you think you can develop a dream, like a dream?
100%. Yeah, I can tell you how to do it right now. Super easy.
Okay.
You know what it is?
No.
You keep a notebook next to your bed.
Yeah.
And every time that you remember a dream, you write it down as soon as you wake up.
Okay.
And because you're training your mind into bringing it into existence, like you're actually thinking about it and giving more attention to it, your brain will start to remember it better.
So you're making it liminal.
And you're having it's a habitual thing, because a lot of times I know that I've woken up and I know, I can remember I know right now, like
Right.
being fully awake, that I remember my dream, but it's all mushy. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's very cloudy.
Foggy. Yeah.
And breaking through that fog is just training your brain to remember those things.
Yeah.
It's in the same way lucid dreaming. And so
Yep.
I was going to agree with you with my view on it is it's totally a spiritual thing. And
So you think all dreams are spiritual?
not all of them. I think it is. I think my answer kind of goes an amalgamation because I think that some dreams is just your brain clearing out stuff,
Right.
processing stuff that happened through the day. Like, I don't know, I saw a bunch of red cars, and I'm probably going to have some red car in that dream. The other thing, this is what I meant to say, is that we dream every night.
Yeah.
Everyone dreams every night.
Yep.
And it's almost like a psychological, I can't remember what it's called, selection bias, I think it is like if you buy a new car, right?
Yeah.
If you
Or if you you want to buy it, like.
right, yeah, you start looking at a car. Like I bought a car that I was it's not a new car, but new to me car that I bought. I had never really thought about it other than like the day before. I needed a new car. I looked online. CarMax had this car. I'm like, cool, I like that. Went out and bought it the next day, right?
Yeah.
And then ever since then, now every time I drive around, I always see the same model of car.
Right. Yeah.
And you never are aware beforehand of like, oh, there's a lot of Toyota Yaris's.
Right.
I didn't buy a Yaris, but I'm just saying as an
I would
example.
have punched you if you bought a Yaris.
Yeah. But you just become aware of it because now it's something that's like conscious. It's in your life. That same
Right.
shift to now recognizing all these patterns, that is what you do when you start training your brain to dream. When you start writing it down, it kind of tells your brain,
So I don't know if
this is
you're
important.
I don't know if you're necessarily training your brain to dream. I think what you're doing is you're just acknowledging the dreams that you have.
Well, no,
You're kind of making yourself you're conscious aware of what was happening when you're unconscious.
that's what I'm saying. But you have to train your brain to actually remember and not just discard it as soon as you wake up.
Gotcha.
So that's
most of the time
training.
I lay there. Like if I have a really cool dream or whatever, I'll lay there and think about it for a minute, and then I'll fall back asleep, and then it's gone forever.
See, what's interesting is I was never a big lucid dreamer, and I'll just say lucid dreaming is another thing I don't want to. I think you're playing with fire there.
Okay, is that when you can control what's happening in the dream?
Yeah. So basically, lucid is just being awake.
Yeah.
In a dream state.
Interesting.
So this does happen to people. It's happened to me.
Yeah.
A couple times. I think most people.
But I feel like in my dreams, there's some level of control that I still have.
Well, then you have some level of lucidity, because most dreams should play out like a movie. Like you're
Just playing a part.
Yeah, most
or
of the
you're
time.
watching the movie.
Or depending on how it comes out. But
Yeah.
a lucid dream is they're unmistakable. You know it because all of a sudden you're aware you're in a dream,
Yeah.
and you go, I'm in a dream. I know I'm in a dream. I can actively control stuff. So you literally can go, I'm going to fly right now. And you just start flying.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have all these powers.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. I change that horse into my mom, so I can have Freud would say that. But you can actually learn how to do that too.
Yeah.
I won't go into that, but I was saying that whole lucid dream, I think that's where if you are actively trying to lucid dream, that gets into astral projection, which is a very new agey thing.
Yeah, yeah. Very dangerous.
And I think coming back to the fact that there is some spiritual aspect to some dreams, because I think, again, some dreams are purely just chaos.
Yeah.
It's just cleaning out stuff. Or not everything in a dream has to have some deep symbology. How about I'll say that?
Yeah.
That there's just, this is stuff I'm processing.
Pizza,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a pedophile, so I don't think about pizza. But
Well, they always say that if you eat pizza, then you end up having weird dreams at night.
Oh, yeah.
I've never had that experience, but I don't know why they use that as the...
Yeah. But, so, lucid dreams, when you start doing this, basically astral projecting is your consciousness the same thing. It's like it's a stepping stone.
Yeah,
like
yeah. I hear you.
to astral projection, which is actually okay. Your consciousness is aware it's in a dream state, but now you're going to do that while you're awake, and you're going to leave your body and actually travel to other dimensions that aren't dream worlds.
Right.
So you get into this real weird leaving your
you
consciousness.
can see people,
Right.
Like you're invisible.
There's
and
interactions, or you can actually like look down at your own body
Right.
and fly through the normal world.
Right. Yeah.
So you
could literally fly to your friend's house.
right, and then go and see what they're
watch them while they're making a sandwich or
right.
whatever.
Yeah. So I think the fact that that's so closely tied into dreams does show that there's some spiritual aspect to it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they also say that DMT, and this is one of those things that's, I think, some scientists.
This is on my list.
Oh, was it?
Ayahuasca, DMT, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, so they do say, and I haven't read, like, I don't keep up to date with, like, the current hallucinogen scientific world or whatever.
Right.
But they did used to say, I think it was Rick Strassman wrote this book called DMT, the Spirit Molecule. Like, Joe Rogan, like, loves him and all that stuff.
Of course.
But he was the one that did a bunch of, like, very medically controlled studies with using dimethyltryptamine, which is the, like, most powerful hallucinogen ever.
Right.
And it occurs naturally in your body, and they say it
is it the pineal gland thing?
Yeah, they say that, but one of the, I think they go back and forth, I think, where it's like, oh yeah, we found DMT in the pineal gland, but it's really hard to, like, do the study of, like, a human, like, cut open their head and
Right.
like go dig in there and see if it,
Right.
you can't really do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a lot of hypothesizing, but
Yeah.
basically the whole idea is small amounts of DMT, which are produced naturally, we'll just say for the sake of it, in the pineal gland, get released, and that actually is what triggers dreaming. So they say DMT gets released in small amounts when you dream, and then also you get like a rush of it right when you die. So on the point of death. And so the argument for that is that DMT is basically like the Windex of that spiritual realm. You're talking about that veil.
Yeah, so it's cleaning it.
It's cleaning it, and you can
allowing
see
you
into
to
it.
Yeah.
And then when you get like a large amount of it, that's what they say is maybe that's
They crack the window.
yeah.
They don't just clean it; they open it.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way, not cleaning it. But that's that's what takes people on the life review, where all these people have near-death experiences and they actually do die.
Yeah.
And they all kind of say it's the same thing. You're going up to heaven, and there's like a life review. A materialist would say that your brain's just tripping because it knows it's dying, and it's just
Right.
flooding your brain, and you're just having a psychedelic trip right as you die.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean anything. Just everyone happens to do the same thing.
Right.
Other people would say like DMT is like this spiritual, thing that allows us to connect to the spiritual realm.
Right.
But yeah, there is a connection with that drug, DMT, and ayahuasca contains DMT.
Right.
So
right.
it's the same thing. But yeah, it is tied into dreaming.
So pharmaceuticals do kind of, they thin that veil. Like I mean,
certain ones, yeah.
Pharmakia is mentioned in Revelation, and pharmakia is one of the things that we're warned to not participate in.
Yeah.
So a lot of these Christians that are because it's as the sin of witchcraft.
Yeah.
So wow. I don't know if you can hear the dogs. My dogs upstairs are going nuts. Somebody must have knocked on the door. But as the sin of witchcraft, which is interesting to think about because the Greek witchcraft is translated pharmakia.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, it's sorcery, divination, and it has this whole spiritual tangibility.
Yeah.
Or access route. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That these pharmakias, and then they would affect your dream life, and people go into trances.
Yeah.
And they have visions. So trances are another way. It's like a dream state.
Yeah, I think the best way, maybe the dancing around the term, is just altered state of consciousness, because that's what the dream state is, an altered state of consciousness. You're not, in that one in particular, you're not conscious anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But your soul, your spirit, the consciousness.
Yeah. The essence of your being.
The essence of your being obviously continues while you're asleep. Your brain doesn't stop. Your body doesn't stop.
Right.
These kind of things. So
it's just
I think
incredible to think about how God designed this.
Yeah, and I think the fact that obviously I don't promote drugs at all. None of us do here. But I think the fact that if we do have DMT in our body and it does get released on a nightly basis when we dream, I'm not saying you should do DMT.
Right.
I'm just saying if that actually happens, that is almost like gives more credence to God wanting to give us some sort of connection to Him, to that's our little it's like a radio dial. Dude, that's how you turn on.
There's a verse in Ecclesiastes: He's placed eternity in the hearts of men. It's almost like this part of how we were created to physiologically
connect, have some sort of
put us in a position. And that's why I think the pineal gland was probably worshipped, and
the pine cone, right?
Yeah, the pine cone, and then and so the big thing is if you want to have great dreams, don't use fluoride. Right. Decalcify that bad boy.
Yeah.
And that could be part of remember I was saying when I was younger, when I was younger, I had much more vivid dreams and more often, and I would remember them more often. I also too felt like when I was younger that dreams were actually communication to me at some capacity. And I think other people look at it that way as well.
Yeah.
If my pineal gland was becoming calcified through fluoride, which is in all of our water, and we go to the dentist and they would put it on, I've only known about this over the last couple years, then that might be the reason why my dream state has seemed to trail off as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with it. And there's other aspects of fluoride where your path, like in Nazi Germany after the Weimar Republic, they would put fluoride in the water because it pacified people. So I think there's the pacification of people might be more willing to be spiritually emboldened, right? If you have something that we're getting like super hippie here. Right. If you're getting like your the radio dial to communicate with God, one aspect of connection with the spiritual world is being physically. When you're talking about calcification, we're literally talking about a physical change of calcium and hardening of a part of our gland of our brain that produces this stuff. I think that's why you have such a spiritual decline in all these older, because you look at all civilizations, and I think the Epic of Gilgamesh was the first one that actually it's the oldest writing, and it also was the first time it talks about the interpretation of dreams. So it was a big part all the way back. So if you look at all these ancient cultures, every ancient culture talked about dreams. Every ancient culture talked about the importance of dreams, the interpretation of dreams. They all talked about all these things. It's only a modern, very materialistic invention. And I don't think that...
Post-Christian.
And I think these drugs and it's intentional. My point is it's pacifying, and I think it's a spiritual pacification that they're trying to do to people.
They want us eating bugs, living in pods, and owning nothing.
Yeah, and not communicating with God.
Not communicating with God.
Or not even being open to. And I just want to preface all that by saying, obviously, if God wants to communicate in a dream to you,
nothing will stop him.
I don't want people to start, maybe as we move into what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
is obviously, I don't think this needs to be said, but I just want to say it so that it's said. If God has an important message that he wants to get through to you in a dream, you don't have to worry about remembering your dream.
Right.
It will happen. If you need to, if you're reading your Bible, staying in touch with God, praying often, reading the Bible, talking to like-minded friends, being Christ-centered in your mind, the interpretation will come. You'll know a Christian interpretation of it. Like, you don't have to worry about that if you aren't, like, for me, I never remember my dreams anymore.
Right.
I'm not worried about God communicating to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not worried about the calcification.
Yeah.
God can communicate however he wants to communicate, whatever he wants to communicate with you. That's not a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. He can get it to you. And your memory will, like, if it's a God dream, he has his ways. He has his ways of just imprinting it to where you won't forget it.
Yeah, he's done so much crazier stuff than having me helping me remember a dream.
Right,
yeah.
Totally. Me too. Yeah. So let's move into the biblical and the more holy spiritual, like the God spiritual side of dreaming, because that is, like one of the things that I was thinking about was I had heard a story, and I was looking for it earlier today. I couldn't find any proof of it, but I've heard it many times that God was giving Muslims dreams in the Middle East, and that they were seeing dreams of Jesus and speaking with him, and he would direct them to trust him and to give their life to him, and they would get saved through dreams because there was no gospel being preached because it was against the law. People were being murdered for their faith, and so missionaries weren't able to get in there and whatever. And so I was just thinking about how God will use dreams in unbelievers' lives to work out his will, and to do things that are according to what he wants. And probably one of the first place where you see a dream is with this guy Abimelech in the Old Testament. Yeah,
can I just, before we get into that sparked a thought. I have heard tons of those stories, particularly in the Middle East, where they see Jesus and they've never seen Jesus before.
Right.
And they immediately know, you're Jesus Christ, you are the Son, you are the Christian.
You're God.
You're God.
Yeah.
I know that. The whole fact that does happen, it's so reported. Like, it's not just one time and we're, us stupid Christians are clinging to that one time. But just, I want to use that as a proof point when we Christians can worry about, what is God going to do? Is he, there's some tribe in the Amazon who's never talked to anyone outside for 1,000 years. Yeah. Is God going to send them to hell because they don't have the opportunity to know Jesus?
Yes, he will.
Well, yeah, he will. That's it.
I'm just kidding. That's it.
No.
He can do anything. He could send a talking parrot.
Right.
That was a missionary that, flew away and had only the gospel.
Right. So the fact that, like, we have reported evidence of God appearing to Jesus himself appearing to people,
in dreams.
God can handle the tribe in Africa or the Amazon rainforest that hasn't talked to people. And there's actually missionary stories of missionaries that go to, like, some uncontacted tribe, and they're like, hey, we want to tell you about Jesus. And they start telling the story, or, like, the gospel to them, and they go, yeah, we know that. That's what we've been worshiping for, like, the last 500 years. And they're like, well, how do you know that? And they're like, I don't know, we just always knew that.
Our tribe leader had a dream and talked with him.
Yeah, so it has happened all throughout history.
Right.
So I think that, and I think this is a big, aside from a talking parrot, I think that dreams are definitely a way that God spreads his gospel.
Yeah.
So God can handle those tribes in Africa or wherever. The Amazon rainforest, the uncontacted, he has, and probably continue to do that, talk to people and he can handle that.
Yeah, yeah. I think when we talk about Christians and dreams,
Yeah.
and there's a great resource I'm gonna shill. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our good friend Ken Johnson, which we've talked about many times. I mean, he's been a guest on the podcast. He wrote a very simple book called The Ancient Language of Dreams and Their Biblical Interpretation. I think it's like $10 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Just get it. And he breaks down like all of the biblical, most of the biblical dreams that we can find in the Bible. And he also has a whole section in there about like other extra biblical things, like from the book of Jasher, which we're going to look at too. And so we're going to pull a little bit from this book while we're on this topic, because it's just very thorough. And it's a big help for us as we walk through this a little bit. But I think it would be good. It would be a good idea to just kind of, and we've covered a lot of this already. We talked about visions, and the difference between visions and dreams is that one would be like a day vision, or an open vision would be while you're awake, and the other one would be while you're asleep. And so a vision and a dream are somewhat synonymous in the Bible. They're interchangeable in a lot of places, and the way that you can tell the difference is to go back to the original language, either the Hebrew or the Greek, and see what it says there for that particular word. Whether it was, I was given a vision while I was, in my room or whatever, with Isaiah, like his personal calling, or Ezekiel chapter 1, or Daniel. And you can tell by the original language whether it was a type of a vision or a dream or whatever. And so we don't really need to go into all of that, but they all are on what I would say is on the same plane. They're on the same plane. And because when God begins to interact with his creation in this way, with people in this way, it seems to have a very similar, they have the same similar fingerprints throughout the experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good way to put it or not.
Yeah.
But I did make a highlight here, and it says, I just wanted to read, this is from Introduction to Dreams. It says, first you must try to understand what God said through the centuries recorded in the Bible. And then second, you must pay attention to your dreams. And I think that's like the basis of like what you were talking about earlier, like an interpretation, like rule would be, what is my dream? Okay, do I understand, does my dream that I have, does it connect in any way to something that I know about the Bible? And then secondly, if it does, then I need to pay attention to that dream. So, and it could be something as simple as an animal, a particular animal, like a snake or a horse or a frog or something like that, and you realize, oh yeah, I know about the frogs because the plagues of Egypt, and that's where frogs were first mentioned or whatever. And you go back and you check it out and see what it is, and maybe that's a helpful thing for you to interpret your dream.
And looking into, frogs are super prominent. How is it used in the Bible first? And even going into, like, if you want to get nerd territory, like if you really want to find out what a frog means, and it doesn't mean, like, when you kiss your mom, she's going to turn into your wife, or,
right.
what Freud would ever say.
Freud would say,
turning your prince into whatever, is find out what the authors of what they were talking about with a frog, because the frog, you just pulled that as an example, the plague was directly related to a deity.
A deity, yeah, that's right.
So, okay, what does that deity represent? Oh, can that be something?
Fertility. That was the god, the frog.
Oh, was it the frog god?
Yeah.
So, maybe if you start seeing frogs, maybe that one...
And unclean spirits, too, was the other one.
So one biblical interpretation may be something to do with fertility. And we're just making this up, more or less, but I'm not saying that as 100%
So
fact.
it could have like a sexual immorality connotation, like it's a warning to you.
Right.
Or...
So that's how a biblical interpretation of a dream should look like. What does the Bible say? Do a little bit more research into what do they mean when they use that. What's the context of that? And then, okay, how can that apply to me? And the other thing is, you just wait.
Yeah.
Because there's only one way that you know that it's from God, is his will happen.
Right.
So if God is sending you a whole bunch of dreams about frogs, and frogs are connected with fertility, and maybe that means you're going to get pregnant. If
Right.
you've been trying to get pregnant, something like that.
Right.
But you won't know until the actual outcome happens.
Right. So there is one general thing, they call it the law of first use.
Yeah.
And it's basically like you want to go to the first place you find in the Bible that use of that particular thing, whether it's a sheaf of wheat or whether it's an animal or whatever in that dream. So like just we're talking purely for interpretation methods and reasons. But what's interesting to me is that Ken says here, he says that usually it says the Lord will use any believer with zeal to prophesy and witness to non-believers. God usually speaks in dreams to mature believers, the old ones, those who have spent time studying and memorizing Scripture. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as if when you wake up from that dream, what's the first thing that pops in your mind connected to the Word of God about it? And a lot of times, like, that's my leaning. Like automatically I'm thinking like, okay, was this a biblical dream? Was this a God thing?
Right.
And because not only, and also too, I think it's healthy. Like you were talking about keeping a notepad next to your bed. I think it's also very spiritually healthy to pray and ask God to give you dreams from him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That was going to be the 2 points.
Oh, really?
I totally forgot about it because we got off track. One, a pragmatic way is writing down your dreams, and two is much in the same way of, as we always say, pray for discernment so you can get discernment.
Yeah.
Pray to have dreams, or say, hey, God, if you want to speak to me with dreams, I'm open to it. Like
I used to pray over my kids when they go to bed when they were little, and I would pray that God would give them dreams of him, of heaven, whatever, just speak to them.
My nightly prayer has not really changed much in that 25 years.
Yeah.
I'm 32. Yeah. It's pretty much always been, and it always is. I always do pray for just let me have, I say, good dreams and happy dreams. And keep me away from evil things and evil people and evil dreams.
Yeah.
That's
a good prayer. That's a good prayer. So, let's go into like I just want to the Abimelech one. I do want to touch on that one because this is actually a really cool story in the Old Testament because it has to do with an unbeliever, and God using an unbeliever through a dream to direct the affairs of a believer. Mm-hmm. So Abraham and his wife Sarah were journeying through an area towards. They were going through an area and they meet up with Abimelech, who is a king, and Abimelech basically says, "Is that your wife?" Talking to Joseph with Sarah, and Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham was scared of him because he was a king, and he was just kind of traveling through, and he's like, "No, it's my sister," and so what? And he kind of tells Sarah beforehand, like, I'm going to tell him you're my sister. And I don't know what wife would take that. First of all, it's like, like my wife would be so offended that you're not willing to die for me. Like
maybe they've just been both eating a lot of graham crackers, so he doesn't mind.
Well, he must have gotten off the graham crackers because God said, "I'm going to make you the father of many nations."
Yeah, maybe that's finally what happened.
More descendants than the sand. So, but he said, so Abimelech says, "Oh, okay, cool." So he takes her as his wife, and Abraham's kind of like bumming out. And God goes to Abimelech in a dream, and he tells him, "Hey, that's my servant, and he's married, and I'm going to kill you." Basically, he's like, "I'm going to kill you because of this." And he's like, "Whoa, well, God," he like negotiates with God in his dream. He's like, "I'm righteous. Like I had every good intent. I didn't know it was his sister, and surely you won't judge me for that." And then so then God says, "You're right, give him back his wife." And so he wakes up, he tells his servants the dream, they give him back his wife, and then they move on for the rest of the story. But I just thought it was really interesting because it shows that God will speak to anybody as he wills concerning his ultimate will,
right,
if he needs to. And God needed Abraham to go through and get to the promise, to show him the promised land. So he was able to use this dream in his life, which was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of in the same vein of that, Another one that was pointed out, which actually there's a lot of more context, which is so awesome about Ken.
Yeah.
Pilate's wife. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read this because we all know the story, but this sums it up so well. Pontius Pilate was a Roman governor of Judea under the reign of Tiberius Caesar. Being Roman, he was a pagan and worshipped the Roman gods and goddesses. He did not believe in a Jewish Messiah. Pilate was the one who had Jesus crucified, even though he knew full well Jesus had not broken any Roman law. And so this is from Matthew 27. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? For he knew that these Old Testament. It's in King James.
It's in King James. That's the worst
For
part.
he knew that for envy they had delivered him. When he was set down on the judgment seat, here's the key part. His wife said unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. So it says, so did Pontius Pilate's wife dream come true? Was Pilate destroyed for murdering the Christ? The historian Eusebius, called the father of church history, recorded the events that happened from Christ's time up to AD 325. Eusebius records Pilate's wife dream coming true as predicted. Said he should have heeded the warning. This is the quote. It is worthy of note that Pilate himself, who was governor in the time of our Savior, is reported to have fallen into such misfortunes under Caius, whose times we are recording, that he was forced to become his own murderer and executioner, and thus divine vengeance, as it seems, was not long in overtaking him. This is stated by those Greek historians who have recorded the Olympiads, together with their respective events which have taken place in each period. Pilate was arrested and charged for the death of an innocent man, Jesus, and Caesar ordered him to be beheaded for the crime.
Wow.
But before this took place, Pilate committed suicide.
Wow.
So, again, another one, I just like that the church fathers give so much more
Right.
to that because, again, and I mentioned this with other visions that are dreams that we're not going to necessarily go into, is there's literally one line in the Bible where Pilate's wife comes up and says, I had a dream, don't do that.
Yeah.
And that gets so overblown, and it's nice to see that, again, even the dream of a pagan woman, came, and so there's a couple points. It's like, and the same thing with the king that you were talking about, Abimelech.
Yeah.
Is that they understood that this was God. You know what's so funny about that? He knew he was communicating with a real God, that it wasn't just a dream.
Right, yeah.
And she still had the conviction, too, of, oh, you shouldn't do this. You're going to die if you do this.
Right.
Because there is some serious ramifications.
Something's up with this Jesus guy.
So I just love that it's pulled into the point that in their dream, they have full awareness that they're communicating or receiving information from, in Pilate's wife's point, receiving information.
It's weird. It's like, I wonder, so this is why I do believe that the spirit of man is connected somehow in his dreams.
Right.
Because his spirit would understand
Right.
through the spiritual nature of God. Because
Yeah.
he's coming to him in the spirit
Right.
through his dream.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
No, but you know what, man? That's just the brain, clearing out some garbage.
Right,
Nothing
yeah.
to see here.
Nothing to see here, right?
Keep drinking, going to the dentist, getting that fluoride.
So the next one that we wanted to bring up was the lying spirit.
Yeah.
You want me to read this one, or do you want to read it?
Yeah, go ahead. You can read it.
Okay. There always have been and always will be false prophets who say anything that will get them money or power. Speaking for God often gets a person thrown into jail or worse. This was the case for the prophet Micaiah. The king of Israel was evil. He worshipped false gods, but he persuaded godly King Jehoshaphat to go into battle with him. Micaiah, it's spelled Micaiah, so I don't know how to pronounce Micaiah. That's what I'm going to say. Heard from the Lord that God would allow the evil king to be slain in battle. But all of the other so-called prophets were just opportunists, and they were liars. Micaiah wondered how this could be. Then God showed him in a vision. So Jehoshaphat was the good king, and the evil king of Israel, because it was during the split kingdom. He talks him into going into war with them, and then what's interesting is he brings Jehoshaphat won't go into war until he hears from the prophets, and the king was like, no, don't bring Micaiah, because he always brings a bad report.
Right.
And he brings a bad report. It's so funny. This is what it says in the scripture. This is out of 1 Kings 22. It says, and he said, hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on his manor, and another said on that manor. And there came forth a spirit, and stood before the Lord, and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all of his prophets. And he said, thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. So, and then it goes on to say, God allowed the lying spirit to enter those pseudo prophets and make sure that the evil king would die. That would be Ahab. Notice, however, that God did not and would never deceive a true follower of his. And this is another reason you need to know to be a mature Christian before you work in the area of dreams and visions. So
yeah, I love that, and I first heard about that with Heiser, because they were there was like a Q&A, and they had said, does God ever lie or deceive? And what's so cool about this is that's a spiritual Deuteronomy 32.
The council.
The council.
Yeah.
This is a
divine counsel.
Divine counsel passage that's talking about, so basically, because it's so difficult, God's saying, like, he's sitting around and he's like, hey, I got to get this done. And how are we going to get this done? So he's asking for like opinions from like different spirits. Yeah. And then one spirit comes up and says, I'm going to do this. And then another one says, I'm going to do that. And then another one comes up, and this is the one that's recorded. And he goes, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm going to go lie. I'm going to go and
be a lying spirit.
Be a lying spirit in all the prophets' mouths. And God's like, go do that. That's a good idea. So it's interesting to see. I love that passage because it gives a glimpse into like how God rules, how he works.
Because I mean, if he wanted to kill Ahab, he could have just killed him in his sleep.
Right.
He could have just struck him down.
Killed him. Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't need ideas from spirits either, like other spiritual beings. But
so the thing was too is that it was fulfilling prophecy, right? Because Elijah had, Elijah had been, Ahab and Jezebel were his nemesis. They hated him, and he basically prophesied she was going to be thrown down and trampled by dogs, and he was going to die by the sword. He goes into battle, he dies by the sword. She gets thrown off the wall by a eunuch, and dogs come and eat her bone, eat her flesh, tear her flesh up. So God was fulfilling his own word through his true prophet, and he sent the lying spirit through the false prophets so that they could, they would accomplish his will. Yeah. It's just crazy. Like, even the lies accomplish God's will.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it.
Crazy to think about.
It's just so cool.
Yeah.
And so.
But it all happened through a dream that Micaiah had in a vision, a dream of this whole event taking place. Like, he understood God's divine plan through this vision. Crazy. Sorry.
So cool. No, it's so cool. So there's a couple, and I just wanted to, I'm going to skip the actual Bible passages because there's a lot, but there's some cool end times, obviously. We've talked enough about them. Dreams that come from it. So this one's with Daniel's beast. It says, after the fall of Babylon, Daniel prayed and asked God to further reveal the meaning behind Nebuchadnezzar's idol dream. God answers his prayer. It said, Daniel saw 4 great beasts that represented the same kingdoms as the 4 metals in Nebuchadnezzar's idol dream. And Then it says, the vision shows the Antichrist will arise from an 11th nation and take over the 10-nation confederacy shown in Nebuchadnezzar's dream as a 10-toes. That's the one we sees the idol, and it's made out of all the different...
Gold head, bronze chest, or bronze legs, silver chest. Yeah.
Right.
Different metals.
Yeah. It says the rest... so that's a direct one. It's cool also that the dreams are being used as a dual use. Mm-hmm. Because, again, this is a really cool one. He's telling Nebuchadnezzar, hey, this is what's going to happen to you. Like, some of this is going to happen to you in your lifetime, and then some of it he is prophesying.
Yeah.
Same dream. So God always is, like, using these extra levels. You know what I mean?
8D chess.
8D chess, yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that those visions, what's crazy is Nebuchadnezzar, a non-believer at that point, has a dream about the statue, asks Daniel to interpret it. Daniel goes to the Lord, gets the interpretation, right? Mm-hmm. At the expense of dying if he doesn't come back with the interpretation, right. Which is incredible. And then God uses that dream that Nebuchadnezzar, a complete pagan, unbelieving dude, he uses that to fulfill and show us what's going to happen in the end times, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It didn't come through Daniel. It came through Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
Which a lot of people don't realize that.
The significance of
an unbeliever.
An unbeliever, yeah.
A vivid, actual, clear dream that was going to involve the next 4 kingdoms following, Greek, Romans, the Babylonians. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and there's just a couple other cool ones. Zechariah has dreams about the angels.
Yeah.
The measuring line, a flying scroll. These are all end times prophecy.
We love talking about that.
We love talking about it, but you guys probably all know about that. So
yeah,
we're going to get into...
You want to talk about the extra biblical?
Extra biblical, yeah. These are really cool.
Can we start with Abraham's descendants kill Nimrod?
Yeah.
All right. So this is out of the book of Jasher. So it says, this dream is recorded in the ancient book of Jasher. See if you can understand what it means. So I'll read it because I don't think it's in a King James type language. And at the expiration of 2 years from Abram's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, beholding King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamed that he was standing with his troops and hosts in a valley opposite the king's furnace. And he lifted up his eyes, and he saw a man in the likeness of Abram coming forth from the furnace, and that he came and he stood before the king with his drawn sword, and he sprang to the king with his sword. When the king fled from the man, for he was afraid, and while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the king's head, and the egg became a great river. And the king dreamed that all his troops sank in that river and died. And the king took flight with 3 men who were before him, and he escaped. And the king looked at these men, and they were clothed in princely dresses as the garments of kings, and had the appearance and majesty of kings. And while they were running, the river again turned to an egg before the king, and there came forth from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at his head, and plucked out the king's eye. And the king was grieved at the sight, and he woke out of his sleep. And his spirit was agitated, and he felt a great terror. That's from the ancient book of Jasher. It says, Nimrod was terrified by the dream. Notice in the following verses, Nimrod's servant, Anakai, is not a believer and fights against God, but because he believes in dreams, knows the history of what happened, and knows Nimrod personally, he is able to piece together the interpretation very easily. You want me to keep reading? Okay. And in the morning, the king rose from his couch in fear, and he ordered all of the wise men and the magicians to come before him. And the king related his dream to them. And the wise servant of the king, whose name was Anuki, answered the king, saying, This is nothing else but the evil of Abram and his seed, which will spring up against my lord and king in the latter days. And behold, the day will come when Abram and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's hosts and his troops. And as to what thou hast said concerning 3 men, which thou didst see like unto thyself, and which did escape, this means that only thou will escape with 3 kings from the kings of the earth, who will be with thee in the battle. And that which thou sawest in the river, which turned to an egg at first, and the young bird plucking out thine eye, this means nothing else but the seed of Abraham, which will slay the king in latter days. This is my king's dream, and this is its interpretation, and the dream is true, and the interpretation which thy servant has given thee is right. That's from the ancient book of Jasher as well. The egg of Abraham is the seed or son of Abraham, but was it fulfilled? And was it Isaac or Esau? Sometime after Abraham's death, his grandson Esau killed Nimrod with the sword. Notice the beak of the bird thrust into his eye. Esau killed him with the thrust of a sword. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And you going to read the section? Or I think it's all right.
Yeah, it's pretty... Yeah, I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
The book of Jasher goes into detail about the fight with him and Nimrod and how they fight, and he kills him.
So I thought we can maybe wrap it up after this, but this was so cool that I really got a lot out of it, and this just gives so much more context and amazement, and again, well, if this is actually true.
Right.
Because this is extra biblical, so I'm not putting it on the same footing of what the Bible actually says.
Right.
But I'll just read this part.
Can I just make one statement?
Sure.
What's really nice about extra biblical material, which would be even like the works of Josephus, or like Eusebius, which we were just reading, is it does help to fill in the gaps of the stories.
Yeah.
So that's all I want to say.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's true. Yeah. So this talks about the dreams of the Persian king and the Magi, which are the same Magi that come and visit Jesus, that travel all this far. So here we go. At the time of the birth of Jesus, the king of Persia had a dream that the one true God had incarnated as foretold of old. They then gave the account of the Magi's visit and finding Jesus in more detail to the warning that the angel gave them when they left. The biblical account of this section in this chapter, blah, blah, blah. So it says, History of the Persian Magi. Ancient church father Julius Africanus, who lived from AD 160 to 240, recorded the Magi's own account of the Star of Bethlehem and Christ's birth. So he presumably, and it talks about, he either got it, again, firsthand, secondhand, from the actual Magi, which is, again, filling in some cool spots. Julius wrote that Cyrus commanded a temple be built in Juno. In this temple were many idols of various gods and goddesses, made out of gold and silver with all sorts of precious stones. This temple also contained a hall of records. These Persian historical public records revealed that the king woke one night from a strange dream. He went to the temple of Juno to inquire of the priests there. In his dream, the idols in the temple were all arguing because the statue of the goddess Page was found wearing a diadem with a carbuncle and emerald on top. A star came down from heaven and rested on the 2 stones of the diadem for a time, and then went further and seated itself on the underside of the diadem. A voice from heaven spoke, saying, quote, The mighty sun will come to you and be born of you, he who created this world below and all things therein. He is the beginning and the end, the beginning of salvation and the end of perdition. End quote. Then the statue of the god Dionysus stated, Our time is over. He who is before all things has come into the realm of men, and we are merely deceivers. At once all the idols fell down and were no more. The Magi, or the wise men who were skilled in astronomy and dream interpretation, stated that the goddess Page was a queen worshipped in ancient times and was long since dead and buried, but she was also the personification of the constellation Virgo, the Virgin. The diadem, in the way it was described, represented the country of the Jews, for they are made of 12 tribes. The emerald and carbuncle are two of the precious stones found in the breastplate of the Jewish high priest's ephod. They represented the tribes of Levi and Judah, which in turn were known to represent priesthood and kingship. The star coming down from the heavens is none other than the deity himself, the creator of all things. They then brought out an old scroll which contained a prophecy about the birth of a king marked by a new star. Church Father Origen stated that the Magi had a copy of the prophecy of Balaam found in Numbers 24 about the star coming out of Jacob. It was given to them by the great sage Daniel after the time of Cyrus's taking of the kingdom. Origen also stated that historical records indicated that the Magi were not Chaldeans but Persians. You want me to keep reading, or?
Yeah, that's cool.
The Magi remarked that a star had just appeared. The advice the Magi gave to the king was to send a delegation to Jerusalem, which was the capital of Israel, to inquire about the new virgin-born Jewish divine king. The king did exactly that. He sent a delegation of Magi who had studied the Jewish religion and had come to believe in their sacred writings. The rest of what followed is in the record is the Magi's own words as to what they found. Quote, "When we came to Jerusalem, the sign of the star, together with our arrival, roused all the people. They said, 'Why are the Persian wise men here, and what is this strange stellar phenomenon?' The chief of the Jews interrogated us by asking, 'For what purpose have you come here?' And we said, 'Because he whom you call Messiah has been born.' They did not believe us, but they did not dare to accuse us of anything. But they said to us, 'By the justice of heaven, tell us what you know about this matter.' We answered them, 'You do not truly believe in him, nor would you believe us, even if we swore an oath. You follow your own heedless counsel, because the Christ, the Son of the Most High, is born, and he is the subverter of your law and synagogues. That is why you are acting like you have been stuck with a dart, and are bitter when you hear his name, and see that we have suddenly come here because we truly do believe.'" That's so awesome.
We truly do believe.
These guys, not Jews, obviously not Christians, just
Right.
came out.
Well, they're about to be Christians.
Yeah, exactly. Then they took counsel together, urged us to accept their gifts, and tell to no one that such an event had occurred in their land, because it may cause the people to revolt against them. But we replied, "We have brought gifts in his honor, with a view of proclaiming those mighty things which we have witnessed in our country on the occasion of his birth. And you dare to bribe us to conceal the things which the divinity who is above the heavens has communicated to us, and neglect the commandments of our proper king?" And after reconsidering, they gave the matter up. And when the king of Judea sent for us and put to us certain questions, we acted in the same manner until he was thoroughly enraged at our replies. We left accordingly, without giving any greater heed to him than any other common person. I love it.
Yeah.
We came to a place then to which we were sent, and saw the mother and the child, and the star indicating us to the royal babe. And we said to the mother, "What is your name, O renowned mother?" And she said, "Mary, sirs." And we said to her, "Where are you from?" And she replied, "From this district of the Bethlehemites." Then we said, "Do you have a husband?" And she answered, "I was only betrothed when a certain Sabbath dawned. At the rising of the sun, an angel appeared to me, bringing me suddenly the glad tidings of a son. And in trouble I cried out, 'Be it not so to me, Lord, for I have not a husband.' And he persuaded me to believe that by the will of God I should have this son. Then said we to her, 'Mother, mother, all of the lords of Persians have called you blessed. Your glory is great, for you are exalted above all women of renown, and you are shown to be more queenly than all queens.' The child was sitting on the ground, being, as she said, in his 2nd year, and having in part the likeness of his mother. She had long hands and a body somewhat delicate, and her color was that of ripe wheat."
Long hands,
I love
too.
that. Long hands and ripe wheat. She had a round face and her hair bound up. We brought along with us a servant who was a skillful painter, and who painted a portrait of them both, which we brought back to us and placed in our temple. It is inscribed, "To Jove the Sun, the mighty God, the King Jesus, the power of Persia dedicated this."
Wow.
And taking the child up, each of us in turn, and bearing him in our arms, we saluted him and worshipped him, and presented to him gold, myrrh, and frankincense, addressing him thus, We gift you with your own, O Jesus, ruler of heaven. In no other way would things unordered be ordered, were you not at hand. In no other way could things heavenly be brought into conjunction with things earthly, but by your descent. Such service cannot be discharged, if only the servant is sent us, as when the master himself is present. Neither can so much be achieved when the king sends only his satraps to war, as when the king is there himself. It became the wisdom of your system that you should deal in this matter with men. And the child leaped and laughed at our caresses and words. And when we had bidden the mother farewell, and when she had shown us honor, and we had testified to her the reverence which became us, we came again to the place in which we lodged. That evening there appeared to us one of a terrible and fearful countenance, saying, Get out quickly, lest you be taken in a snare. And in terror we said, Who, O divine leader, could plot against a so heavily armed convoy? And he replied, Herod. But get up straightway and depart in safety and peace. So we immediately departed and brought back home this record of what happened in Jerusalem and of Christ our Savior, who was made known as both God and man. To him be the glory and power upon the ages of all ages. Amen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just love that, so there was a painting of Jesus as a baby.
Yeah, well, you don't know where my mind went after that. It's a painting with him and his mother.
Yeah.
So
Catholics have it.
Yeah. I'm thinking of that.
As soon as I started reading that, I was like, oh gosh, I remember the Catholics would love this. The goddess of all, the mothers of all mothers, the queen of all queens.
Yeah.
But they still said she looked like wheat. She had long hands,
round face, and wheat skin.
Yeah. So
the one thing that was interesting about that too was they gave a detail about him being 2 years old.
Right.
And when Herod gave the order to kill it says in the Gospels that it was everyone 2 and under.
Mm-hmm.
So all the baby males 2 and under when Herod killed all of them. And it makes sense why Herod be so enraged if they talk to him that way.
Right.
Here he is, this vassal anyways. He's not even a real king of Israel because Rome was occupying.
Right.
So he was put in place there to try and be some kind of mediator for the Jews to try and keep them from revolting. And then he goes to his head all this power, and then he finds out that the Messiah is born while he's king, which means he's now reduced down yet another level, right? So if I were him, I would have been like, heck yeah, the king's here. That means I want to serve him. I might have a part in his court when he runs out the Romans,
Yeah.
But he was too arrogant to think otherwise.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so cool. I love the fleshing out. But again,
and then their dream, the Magi,
boat dream at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah.
So it started off with an interpretation, and again, just like the other ones we were talking about with the non-Jews, or Absalom.
Oh, Abimelech.
And Pilate's wife.
Yeah.
Again, pagans. These guys, pagans.
Right.
And they had a dream, or they interpreted the dream of the king. Pagan king had this dream, and then he came, and the sages who were known for interpreting dreams came and said, this is what it is.
Right.
This is our
Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about mature, know the word of God? So Daniel set up the Magi, and that was part of his thing when he was in Babylon. He set up the entire Magi system there,
right,
and he ruled over it. So he would have been training them to look for the signs of Messiah while they're in Babylon, right? Because they're in captivity. He knew that God was going to rescue them out of captivity. He knew that the Messiah would come. So he was just teaching them because he was so godly, right? Daniel was this godly man, and so he was teaching them. So those Magi were trained by Daniel, or at least influenced by his teaching.
They're in the school that Daniel set up.
Yeah, the school of the Magi.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, that God put his secret agent in there.
Right.
But through dreams, God instituted all of these things. And there's so many dreams surrounding the birth of Jesus too.
Yeah.
Mary, Joseph having a dream, warning them to leave, the Magi. I mean, there's just so many dreams surrounding his birth. and his first coming.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
So obviously dreams are important to God.
Yeah.
He uses them quite a bit.
He does. It's like his direct line to
Right. Second direct line.
right.
The first one being the Bible.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, what I was thinking was like,
super personalized.
yeah, and you think about the way that God, like, just think about those dreams right there. One is to get them to move to go fulfill something. The other one was to leave because of a warning of danger.
Yeah.
So, like, the ways that God uses the dreams to move his people.
Yeah.
And
I get what you're saying.
yeah, so that's kind of cool too to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just had to say personally, like, when we were talking about doing this episode on dreams,
Yeah.
we mentioned it a while ago. It was, but then we were starting to, when we kind of like put it on the calendar and we started to like really start to say, okay, here's a target. We're gonna do this episode. I experienced personal spiritual warfare in like a massive way, and that's how I knew we were supposed to do this episode.
Spiritual warfare coming through a dream.
Through a dream. Someone had a dream.
Someone had a dream, yeah.
And they shared it with me. And I think that was so just, I don't want to get any
Right.
details at all about the dream, but I think what it was is that they were spiritually immature, and the dream was probably not from God.
Right.
And they didn't discern, and so they shared it with me when they shouldn't have shared it with me. Just because, and that's the other thing too, like one thing to think about, like if you are a person who has dreams, you need to wait before you go share. Like if you have a dream about somebody or something, and that would affect someone else's life, you need to hold off and just pray and make sure that you're supposed to even share that with them. Because it may be that God's giving you that dream so that you can pray for them, because maybe you're the intercessor, or maybe it's just so that you can be aware of what's going on in their life, and maybe they'll talk to you about it later, and then you'll have insight and you can give them godly counsel.
Yeah.
There's a whole plethora of things, but I personally experienced a massive spiritual attack through a dream.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember when you and I we went to get something to eat, and I was sharing with you, and I was like, man, it's just so weird, and like how it all played out. And I mean, God, and here's the thing is like the use of the dream, right? Like God used that dream, how it affected me, to work in my life personally, to mature me, to bring me into a greater trust of him and some other things.
Yeah. It's like, he knew, just using this as an example, specific example is, again, God knew that this woman was going to say it.
Yeah.
And, he's going to use the outcome of that, of something that's bad, for his good.
Right.
He can always, because same thing happened to me. I have stuff like this all the time that people say to me that they probably shouldn't say, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I really wish I could have gone my life without hearing that, and not a dream in particular, but stuff just in general. But he can turn all things good to him.
Yeah. No, he has no problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if he's in control of everything, that's just more proof of his complete control of everything.
Yeah. And I just thought of something. Is much in the same way that you said, to pray about a dream if you have about someone else. There's also the sign of being a mature Christian, of hearing something, is because Ken actually at the end of this book, he goes into dreams that he had.
Yeah.
And there's one in particular, and that some woman came up to him. I think that's what I was getting confused. The woman came up to him and said, "Hey, I've had this dream about you. I don't know what it means." And he was like, "Oh, I was planning on marrying this girl."
Right.
And the dream wasn't about marriage, but she had said, there's some covenant, or, this dream about an oath.
Yeah.
Because she said, I thought it was about beer, but it's about something else. And she said, like, I had been praying about this, and it remained that I had to tell you. Like, there was time that went past.
Yeah. Like,
making sure, because, again, in that particular instance, God knew that it was a big deal. Like, this guy, Ken talks about this, is he was falling in love with this girl and thinking about marriage. that's obviously a very touchy subject,
Right.
that you just don't want to go in there. But it does say that this woman just kept saying, I was praying about it, and I really feel that like the Lord is telling me to do that. So as someone, not me being as someone, but if you are a person that does get something, like sit on it, even if it's a good thing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was getting at, is always pray for the discernment, because you don't want to go out there, if you do have some dream that's a good thing.
So if you receive someone telling you a dream, like, oh, I had a dream about you, you want to even sit on that and like just don't let it, like, especially if it's something that you've been hoping for or praying about or wanting, like a marriage or a job or something big in your life. You might want to just kind of hold it with a loose hand. And especially if it's good. If it's bad, if it's a bad dream, then I would pray earnestly about it. Like, what does that mean, Lord? Is that for me? Were they hearing you? Was that dream from you?
Exactly.
Because Satan will, and demons will, give dreams to people at times. They'll invade their dream life and they are deceptive. So you may think that what you have is from God when it's not from God.
And I mean, even to just go back into another kind of related topic with this is the DMT. Like there's an interesting, I think some of it has been a psyop that has been taken on, because I think I've talked about this. I've done ayahuasca. I've never done DMT, but I've done ayahuasca before. Yeah. A couple of times. Not in the proper, not what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And it's definitely
fasted and cleanse yourself and all that stuff.
Yeah, with like a shaman, and it's for spiritual purposes. We just did it to trip, and it is not fun. I'll tell you, anyone this. For the first hour, you have the most intense like stomach pain. You throw up and you poop.
Interesting.
And then you just trip for like 6 hours, but it's like the most ridiculously insane trip. But the whole point of what I'm getting to, the dreams and the demons and all this stuff, is that like there's this guy, Terrence McKenna, who was the first person. He wrote in the 70s about mushrooms and DMT and all these things about the spirit realm. Yeah. And he was the first one to talk about the mechanical elves in the DMT experience. And I think the psyop is like Joe Rogan talked about, like, oh, I saw those elves too. I believe that he probably did. Yeah. But you hear all these other people, that's all you hear about is it's like these elves. Machine elves or whatever. I didn't see machine elves. And I know there's a lot of other people who didn't see them. And now I'm not saying there's any one particular kind of being, but a lot of people all say they see the same thing. Yeah. Regardless. I think that DMT is like those beings, like when you trip, particularly with that DMT, any kind of super intense, like everything feels more real than real. Right. Like it feels like a downgrade. Like you're going from
when you
like
come down from the
16K
trip. Right.
to coming back here is like you're in
HD 1080.
140. Right. 140p, like a YouTube video from 2004. Right. In comparison. But those spirit beings or whatever it is, they're always presented as some good thing in the spiritual realm. And that's where you get these new age people where they're all like, oh, they're like so enlightened and they tell me these
spirit guides.
They're these spirit guides. And again, much in the same way that I talked about this book with UFOs, that all the UFO aliens. Yeah. I talked about Jacques Vallée's book, Messengers of Deception, where she interviewed all these different abductee cults that started off out of UFO cults. They're all like socialist. They all hate like freedom. They want everyone to be gay and like all this stuff. Same thing with these demons that inhabit other realms. They're all in this very free, like, they do challenge you at sometimes. They'll like be insightful, but they all like have the same kind of, they do the same kind of things. Right. In this other realm.
Familiar things, yeah.
Right. But they never masquerade as like bad. It's like, this is for your own good. I'm teaching you this higher realm of things. So again, if that's what happens when you're on DMT, or you're doing drugs to go to this place and interact with these beings. And if that's, I believe that realm is the same. I think that's the spiritual realm that has access with
100%.
dreams.
Yeah.
Those are the things that also come through and would tell you stuff in your dreams.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love. I mean, it'd be interesting if you had enough coherence in your DMT trip. If you saw the elves, that you would say to them, "Are you a demon?" If they would have to reveal themselves.
I would have to look into that. Yeah. What was interesting about, I don't want to go too much into it, but I kept, for me, the first couple times, I kept going back to the same place, and they remembered me from the last time. They're like, "Oh,
that's so weird.
You're
dude.
back. Let's continue this conversation." And it was like I didn't leave.
It was like
it went right back to the same spot.
Could have been a month, but it was.
Yeah, for them, there was no time.
Wow.
Or I mean, there was, "Hey, you're back."
Right.
But there was
And those were the elves, or they weren't the elves. You didn't.
No,
see
they weren't. They weren't elves. It was at a dinner party.
People?
I was at this party. No, they weren't people, but it was. I don't know if I would call them elves, but they were these entities. It was just at this.
Did they have faces and stuff?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's crazy.
You don't want to share?
No, I mean they had weird faces that.
Would they morph and stuff? Or?
Yeah, everything's moving. It's
that's crazy.
It's really
I've never tripped like that, so I don't know.
No, I know.
It's all foreign to me. Yeah,
it's hard to describe. It looks like the just geometric shapes and patterns, and everything's changing. And
oh wow,
it's crazy.
That's a thing that I've heard too.
Yeah,
on that, that's a similar.
Yeah, and it's
things become when you. It's almost like you remember when the Matrix, when Neo saw the ones and zeros or whatever, that's a really bad way to describe how what people see with people, almost like they're transparent and they can see outlines of them, but with geometric patterns and things.
Yeah, I mean, you see colors that don't exist,
right?
No, but I mean
I can't imagine
that aren't real.
How do you
shapes?
Your eyes can't even natural eye can't pick up that
no,
range.
I don't. It's just
the spectrum is beyond.
Crazy. Oh, you know, it was a good one. Doctor Who, or Doctor Strange, when he first goes through the multiverse thing. I think in the original one.
Okay.
There's
do they do a DMT?
yeah. There's some things where he's flying through these. I don't watch the Marvel movies. I just remember he gets there's some point in time where there's this 2-minute montage of him going through different planets or universes. There's a couple in there that are dude, that's pretty DMT.
So they probably borrowed that from people's experiences.
Yeah. But the whole point is going back to this one particular place that all people seem to go to.
Yeah.
Is this shared, realm. Yeah. So I think it's one realm that everyone's,
gotcha.
The dreams. And so.
Wow. Bro. Well, this has been a long one, dude. It's been almost 2 hours.
Good.
I think this might be the longest podcast we've ever done.
I could keep going.
Without there's so much. That's what I was saying. It's such a vast topic. I mean, we haven't even touched on interpretations of things too much. I mean, there's a lot there. But so maybe we'll do a follow-up or something like that. I mean, we've gone 2 hours. I don't know if we have to, but we'll see. We'll think about it. I don't know if I'm up for more spiritual fights, though. I didn't like that episode. That was not fun. So
yeah.
But I pray that our listeners, if you've stuck with us this long for 2 hours, that we hope that this helps you at some level, and that you have amazing dreams from God, and that all your dreams come true.
Well, I mean,
maybe not.
He places. What is the thing that he fulfills all our wants, and he plates the wants that.
Oh, God gives you the desires of your heart.
And he's the one that places the desires in this.
Yeah, not only does he place the desire in your heart, but he also fulfills it because he placed it there. Yeah.
So,
but Acts chapter 2, your young men will dream dreams, your old men will see visions, and I'll pour out my spirit on all flesh. So, this is all part of us in the kingdom.
Yeah. So maybe I just say as some distillations of it, dreams are biblical. They're very important.
They can be, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with praying for good dreams.
Yep.
You can learn to get better at dreams. Just a real easy way is to write them down.
Keep a record.
Keep a record next to your bed.
Yep.
Put some notes, the date, what's going on with your life.
Yep.
And you'll get better at it. Pray for it. And stay in the Word and stay in prayer so that you can be better at interpreting dreams. Talk about them with trusted friends that aren't involved in the dream necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
Use discernment if you do have what you believe to be a dream given to you to tell someone else. Obviously, do that. Use discernment. Pray about it. Don't go out rushing and saying.
Yeah. Slow it down.
And
keep an open hand if someone gives you a dream. So if someone has a dream about you and it's something cool or whatever, have an open hand. Let God fulfill that, and don't change your life to try and make the dream come true.
Right.
God is capable of doing all of that.
Yeah. And at the same time, don't go too crazy. I'll say at the same time, don't
over spiritualize.
Spiritualize it or interpret every single thing and spend hours and dragging into, oh, well, does this really mean I do want to have sex with my mom or not? You know, I got to throw one last dig at Freud in there. I was going to say the last one was don't have sex with your mom. With dreams, but yeah, don't God will, if it's important for you and he wants to speak to you or give you information through a dream.
Yeah.
You'll understand it. You'll have the interpretation. It'll come through the Bible, through trusted friends. He will get across what he wants to get across to you. So don't stress it. That's what I'm trying to say.
He's historically done it. So what do you have to worry about?
Yeah.
Yeah. With the Messiah. So
don't stress it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. It's been awesome, epic, and fun. So we will catch you next time.
I love you.
Thanks for listening to the All Out War podcast today. If you had a blast, then we'd love to have you back for another episode. So please subscribe and leave a review. We love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram at All Out War Podcast or on Twitter at AOWcast. These episodes are also available on YouTube unless they contain a little too much truth. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.